which are all keepers, which are veterans and police officers. And also the Proud Boys was the same job with the medicine. So you have to understand, they did do a sacrifice. And they had to have at least 2,000 calories a day, which they would give them a big piece of cake. So they could pass the quota for the helping people in the jail. But what happened is, they used to pass the food to a little door, and they would put you through it, so if you catch it, you catch it, if not, it went over the floor. So this is how they get treated. And Kelly Vance will tell you more about it because of what they went through. But again, the pardon that a lot of them got is not what you think it is. And whatever fund or money you could donate, when you go legit, it's all done on a record, and it'll be distributed to all of them. There are a lot of organizations that collect the money for January 6th, but they didn't get it.
I was hoping there'd be more
This is,
people here.
I know for a fact. So I want to introduce Kelly Vance.
Camera around.
I know he's funny. Sit down, you're too tall. Anyway, I know Kelly a long time, and the last time I saw him before 2 months ago was on the steps of January 6th. And it was like 40 years until I saw him back again, which I was very proud to do. We also escorted prisoners that were coming out of jail and met them at the location. So we know Binford and harassing them and stuff like that. It was our responsibility to meet them and make sure that everything was open. Constantly attacked them. So I had to admit, one of the J6’rs get mad, hate them almost every week and every day about insurrection that got killed. Someone that died that was killed was actually got it. And we got to get it. They'll play the next. So I appreciate everybody coming. Please give your undivided attention to the J6’rs because it's a real special thing. All right, thank you very much. God bless everybody. 2025, 28, and beyond. And if you want to meet the people that go to all these protests, if you show up, when you leave, you're notified and you tell them Trump is still your president. You say, stop puking at my source. Okay.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Kelly Vance. I'm the leader of the Earth Keepers of Florida. I got sentenced to 12 years for seditious conspiracy, and I am one of the people that did not get a pardon. I am currently commuted. I have no reason to believe that was being used for a different reason, but we will go into that later on in the program. What we're trying to do is bring attention to what's going on and what has happened with the January 6th community. So we're trying to go together with Grassroots of America, the John Birch Society, and Roger 45. We're putting a little tour on. We're going around to the state, and people that are local to the area are going to be coming in and talking at these events. So the primary purpose was just bring attention to what's happened, what's currently happening, and what's going to happen. So we just want to spend a little bit of time with each person, and we've kind of got an order that we're going to go in just so you're not hearing the same story over and over again, because a lot of our stories are exactly the same. So we try to just make sure everybody's talking about their own little thing. And then at the end, we'll open it up and we'll have a little question and answer session. So if you have a question or anything, we'll be more than happy to take them and answer those for you. One of the hardest things about the entire process that we went through, and believe me, it was a process, it was pre-planned, it was pre-done, and they knew what they were doing when they started it. The hardest part about it was the emotional toll that it took on not only us, but also our families. A lot of people lost their families. A lot of wives left their husband, didn't stand by their side, they couldn't take it, and I understand it, because it is a hard thing to go through. You have to deal with 4 years with the primary income winner gone. And you're cashing out 401ks, and you're cashing out retirement accounts, and you're selling properties just to keep your bills paid. It cost me over $1.5 million in the last 4 years. Okay? And I'm telling you, I'm not the only one that's had that kind of financial hit. So when you come back out and you're like, okay, I'm free, now what? Can't get a job, can't get hired, all those things. Every time you go to get hired by somebody, I've been all the way through the process, and then right at the last second, they're like, our HR department won't do it. They're afraid we're going to get protesters here. We can't hire you. So as much as we think that everything's fixed, it's really not. And it all started with the emotional toll that it took on our families and the things that our family had to go through. So what I'm going to do right now is bring up Angel Harrelson. Angel's going to talk to you guys first about some of the things she had to go through just to keep things going at home while this entire process started. Her husband, Kenny, was also a bookkeeper. He was arrested in about 2-3 weeks after me.
March 10th. So that was, yeah.
3 weeks, yeah.
3 weeks.
About 3 weeks after I was. And she's done a lot, and she's pulled right through it. So here she is, Angel Harrison.
Hi, everyone. As y'all know, my husband and him was both at J6. And ever since he got arrested on March 10th, 2021, he hasn't been home until April of last year. April 20th is when he was able to come home. Well, my fight began the following week because I got fired from my job. I was told that I was a high-risk employee. I looked for another job. Got fired from that job before I even started. I was a high-risk employee. The third time was the last time I was in the trouble because I got fed. I got fired from that one too, 2 days later, as soon as they found out who I was and who my husband was. Well, I took the initiative and I started making my own patches and designing my own shirts, using drawings on shirts. I was doing whatever I could to make ends meet, just until he comes home because they took his VA benefits at that time. I had to fight his VA benefits 4 times in 4 years.
Wow.
I finally got it. The 4th time was about a year and a half ago, and I got it put in my name. His VA benefits get sent to me on a check. So from now on, I have to go and cash his VA benefits, us to pay the bills and all that stuff. But while I was fighting that 4 times, I ended up starting doing, as y'all can see on that table right there, I embroidered hats, I embroidered patches, I brought some with me. Patches at $10 each. The hats, I got them on sale right now for $20 each. So you have to go and take out pick. I also have a website that's called angelspatriotbattle.org. And I have business cards over there as well. But this other struggle that I've had was, it wasn't just the income. It was one of our kids, he went into the military. And this will probably upset most of y'all here. He was being bullied in boot camp very badly because, of course, his dad is retired Army Sergeant Kenneth Harrelson. During that time, he was able to pass boot camp. It took over a year for him to be able to pass that because they kept moving him. Well, he passed his boot camp. He went through AIT. He passed AIT. As soon as he got to his station in California, he ended up getting his life threatened. They told him there's no cameras on the stairwell, that you don't know what's going to happen to you. And we had to deal with that. And come to find out, even his commanding officer was threatening him. I was on the phone with them, and they thought they could call me and give me an attitude. I told them, I said, I don't know who you think you're talking to. I said, but I'm a wife of a retired Army Sergeant. I said, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not your soldier, sir. So they ended up letting him come home. They used the excuse. It was a medical honorable discharge. That boy was only in the Army for 2.5 years.
Wow.
We had to deal with that. He come home, he was stressed, he was worried about his daddy. Well, after dealing with that, we got threats. I was getting threats through mail ever since he was arrested. I still get them to this day. I brought all of them with me if y'all want to look at them. This is what the wives receive at home. A lot of the family members receive these at home directly to our address, where our kids reside, where our spouses reside. And this is another part that separates us from our loved one. It causes problems because they're afraid they're going to get hurt. I was threatened. I had sexual abuse threatened on me in one of the cars with the police. But I didn't let it get me down, and I don't think no other family member should let it get them down. I had God on my side, I had faith, and I kept my hope up. But as of right now, I thank God for everything, and my husband, and my family. So thank y'all for listening to me. Y'all have a
Thank you, Adrian. Yeah, you can jump over here, grab hats, everything. I've got folks over here as well. I'll sign in and let you by. We'll get that done. Next, we're going to bring up Olivia Pollock. She's going to talk about the arrest process that we all went through.
Like all the other J6 families, our story started that day. And, we were at the Capitol. We were on the west side where a lot of the action happened. And so we went through the day, as everybody else, came home, not expecting to turn on the news that day and find Jonathan and Olivia Pollock, step out of your house. We have a warrant for your arrest. Jonathan and Olivia Pollock, step out of your house. We have a warrant for your arrest. Over these big speakers, they had 4 Bearcats surrounding our house. They had driven through we have a cow pasture in the field. He has a tiny house out there that he was living in, so they had driven through there to get around his house. I was living in a van behind ours on my parents' property. And I look out the window, and they have armed SWAT all the way around, lasers pointed at the van. I hear boom, 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 boom again. Jonathan and Olivia Pollock, come out, you're wanted for your arrest. And wow. I was like, we knew they were following us. We could see, they're very obvious. You can tell when somebody's following you. FBI are very good at their job. But they knew where I worked. They could have arrested me quietly, taken me to jail, no problem. But they had to make a show. And all of our neighbors saw, they were all watching out there, in their pajamas out their door, had to hear everything that goes on. They had no idea, like, what in the world, we go to church on Sunday, we come home, go to work, real quiet, never had any problem with the law. And yet they treated us like, you think we were running running a gang or something out of our house. But, so yeah, so they surrounded our house, called our name on the loudspeaker, and, we come out, or, so they surround me, and I'm like, well, they want me, so maybe I could stall a little bit and give my family a little bit of time to kind of get dressed and stuff. So I'm like, I want to see a warrant for one. You come out, you say you have a warrant for my arrest, I want to see a warrant. So they're like, no, get out of here, step out of the vehicle, step out of the vehicle. We're going to send in the dogs. They had the SWAT dogs and everything. And I'm like, no, I want to see if I have the right to see, do you need to have a warrant if you're going to come knock on my door? And they're like, no, step out the vehicle, step out the vehicle. I'm like, you don't want to send the dogs in here. I was like, I want to see a warrant. So they stalled. Next thing I know, they fire the flashbangs under the van. They go off, hit the van door, in, and I'm like, I want to see a warrant. And so finally, they wave a piece of paper in the air. I'm like, okay, well, get out. I don't know if it's a warrant or not. They never actually showed me. Handcuffed me, take me to the front. They have all of my family handcuffed against the doors of the police vehicles. A lot of people don't know you have to have, the FBI has to have permission from your local sheriff to come onto your property.
Really?
Their jurisdiction. And so everybody thinks Grady Judd's all that. It's not. He let the FBI come in when they knew they never had a problem with us before. They could have quietly questioned us or whatever. But he let them on the property. And they have, local police with them. And so all my family, my mom, my dad just didn't have a shirt on, just in his boxers up against the thing, woke them up out of their sleep. My mom had pajamas on, handcuffed against the cars, and they take me around, question me, and my dad said, they're like, is anybody else on the property? Is anybody else on the property? I'm like, I was like, my sister lives they had just sold their house and they were living in an RV in the back. And they had 3 little girls. One was less than a year old, and then the oldest was 4. And I was like, they're living in the back. I was like, but please don't go back. As my dad talked, please do not go back there with those grenades. There are little babies in there. They will come out. You can just tell them to come out. They'll come out. They go in there. Next thing we know, boom, 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 threw those grenades under their RV, and they come walking my sister and her girl, my brother-in-law was at work at the time, through the yard at gunpoint in front of we have kind of like a 5-acre area, walking all the way through at gunpoint, all those little babies, because they're such a threat to America, and brought them in. But that's just what they do.
Disgusting behavior.
With our cases, they wanted it to be an example, and they wanted it to scare anybody who's threatened to question. That's what we did. We questioned the election, and they wanted to make an example of us, and that's just one way that they did it, by threatening our families and by making an example to our neighbors and to anyone else who wanted to speak up. And that's the thing, I believe we were called up there. God called us up there, and I had no doubt that I was going to be there. And I was like, if we can't stand for this, it was such a blatant show of you have no voice anymore. Our First Amendment is, your vote.
That's
If
right.
you don't have a vote, you don't have a way to change anything. You don't have a way to elect your next representative, or to change a law that you disagree with, or put one in that you agree with, or anything. You have no more
That's
say
right.
anymore. It becomes a dictatorship. And that's what we did. We went up like, if we can't stand on January 6th and protest and ask for them to look at the results of the election again, then what can we stand for? And that's what I felt, and that's where we went. But they wanted to make such an example of us. And that's how they did it. And that was one of the raids. We ended up having 2 on our particular situation, which I'll have Johnny share a little bit of that. But that's the thing. We can't live our life in fear. And yes, you may go through and have a time where you have to stand on principle.
That's right.
And I believe our forefathers did that. They gave their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor for us and for the next generation. And And that's what we got to do sometimes. And
That's
yeah,
right.
it may have consequences. I mean, we spent 13 months in jail because of it. Um, and our 4 years of the whole process. And like Daniel said, you know, our families went through a lot too. The same, you know, emotional turmoil and everything, but it's worth it. Because if we don't stand for something, we'll fall for everything. And if we don't stand up for the next generation, what will our kids have to, you know, deal with
Right.
coming up? And, you know, through this whole thing, I've learned so much. And spending time in, you know, the time that I did spend in jail, I saw how growth it has been. It hasn't just started. And then, you know, the corruption of the BOP and the corruption of the jail system and the money racket that it is has been going on for a long time. And we are just getting light of it because we're just getting thrown into it. And some of the things like I was ashamed. I had been, you know, years before in prison ministry, we go into the jail or the prison in Lowell, the women's prison. And I had no idea what those girls had to go through and what those girls were dealing with their trials, with their, you know, their defense of having to fight for a public defender or whatever they were having to deal with, the racket that it is, every single thing, just the bare necessities of something to clean your cell, toilet paper, soap, just the basic necessities, human rights. You have to fight tooth and nail just to get it. We went, I think it was almost 2 months without cleaner in our unit. There's almost 40 women that were in there, and they would not bring disinfectant in. They kept giving us degreaser to clean the showers, they cleaned the toilets and everything. We're sharing toilets and everything. Just that kind of stuff it's sick, and that's just the minimum, you know, cleaning supplies, let alone the lives that are just getting, you know, thrown away, thrown into these women are having to have babies in jail because they're a threat to waiting on pre-trial, haven't even been sentenced yet, pre-trial, and they had to have their children in jail and taken away from them, and got a 1 hour visit every week, maybe if the visits weren't canceled, to see their newborns and just stuff like that. Like I had no idea, but now we know, and I'm hoping through this, like God's given us a voice to speak for the ones who can't speak. And I left a lot of folks that I became friends with in there in DC, and they said when I left, they're like, don't forget about us. You know, we're still going to be going through this. And, you know, I thank God for Donald Trump for giving us the pardon and giving us our lives back.
Amen.
And, but there's a lot of there's a lot of people that are still going to go through this broken justice system. And I'm praying we got 4 years to hopefully change it so that
Yeah.
January 6th, what happened to us doesn't ever happen to anybody else. Or at least not
Amen.
time.
Amen. Yeah.
So don't, I guess all I have to say is don't grow quiet and complacent. I believe that's why we're
Right.
not in the place that we are now.
Keep it alive.
And that's how we
Keep the story alive.
So don't, we may have a little 4-year respite, but that's when we need to work the hardest to get
Yes.
hopefully something in place so that's next 4 years with us.
Yep.
And then our children have the next.
Well, we've
4
got
years,
Trump.
and so on. And, yeah, we fight and hopefully, like Trump said, fight, because that's what we got to do. We
That's
do have
right.
to fight and let it be in our day so our children don't have to deal with it. Just, you know, thank you for the opportunity to let us share our stories and for Kelly for setting us up. Really appreciate it.
Good job.
People talk about the guys that were in DC and all how bad it was for us. Let me tell you something. When we got to prison, it was a lot better for us because the inmates there respected us for what we did. But in the female prisons, they were not respected. My wife went to prison for over a year, and she had to deal with it. And the stories there are a lot worse in prison than they were for us in prison. I mean, C2B, when we were in DC, that was one thing, but the actual prisons were worse. So let me know what you went through. Now we're going to bring up our brother John. he's got the best story of J6, I think. We knew about him while we were in DC because we kind of admired what he was doing. So I've been waiting to hear this story for 4 years. Let's go.
No, I appreciate that. I just thank y'all so much for just taking the time to come out and get together, because that's what America's all about. This is our, this is what we're meant to do. As American citizens, we have to come together, stand beside each other, and realize what's going on in our country, and be vigilant, be active, come together in meetings like this, and be able to do something in the community. But in January 6th, I won't get into a lot of it, but at the beginning, COVID was really one of the biggest eye-openers of just how bold the government started being. They weren't being secret anymore. They were showing their true colors and just telling you, what you can do in your own home, turning families against each other out of fear, and saying, you're not allowed to go to church anymore for your safety. We are now your God, and we will tell you what you can and can't do. And we were those that always, just every time we could buck the system, we would. But we hated COVID because it opened so many eyes of what your friends would do, really. People that, would preach one thing, and then as soon as they were threatened with the fact of, oh, you may be sick, or you may get this disease or something, you would turn on each other. And you saw people who were falling for their tricks. And it was very sad, but it opened a lot of eyes. And then when 2020 came around, and we saw what they did with the election and just the lies that they were, portraying and trying to steal our vote, it was the final straw. And, we said we have to go up there. So we had a whole church van, 2 vans full. We went up there, and we wanted to make our voices known. We went there to stand peacefully with Donald Trump and with the rest of America. We're like, this is much bigger than Donald Trump. This could be the fall of America. If we don't stand now, we're done. And,
That's right.
So we were excited. We went up there and we saw the people, and it was such a beautiful sight to see that many Americans stand up at that time together.
It was.
And we went to the Capitol in front, and we're like, man, this is amazing. We're peacefully protesting. All of a sudden, pepper spray. We get covered in pepper spray and tear gas, and I mean, they just hit us with everything all of a sudden. And I was right there at a point where I remember Ashley Babbitt died, and she died right. Roseanne Boylan.
Roseanne, right.
She had died right beside me, and it was a very chaotic scene. I mean, it was wild what went on there, and but we were proud to be there. And when we got back to the hotel, we just turned, like Olivia said, we turned on the news, and it was, you're now a terrorist. You're now a threat to America. And you're like, wow, look how fast they spun it. Look how fast they changed what really happened there. But we saw it in COVID. We saw what they could do with the media. But then people started buying into it. Like all of a sudden, the media is truthful now. And good patriotic men and women that we, hung out with all the time. They're like, oh, y'all messed up. That was wrong. Y'all should have never been up there. And all, I mean, they turned on us too. And, it was so sad to hear so many families turning on each other and co-workers and just everybody pitted against each other. That's exactly what they wanted.
Yep.
But luckily we had a very strong family, very, very patriotic, and we stood together. And when we heard that the FBI put me on the most wanted list, I'm like, well, we fought this far, I'm not going to go down easy. And so we had a lot of military buddies and, police officer buddies that kind of told us how to fight. And so we knew what to do. And so as soon as they went to my boss, they tried to catch me at work and get information. My boss called me and was like, hey, FBI's here. But they wanted me to help turn you in. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just letting you know. And we had caught them watching us at church and different things like that. So I'm like, all right, I'll catch y'all later. And then I went dark, phone out the window. And, and it was a good solid 3 years of, on the run. And it was such an amazing time. People would say, well, how could you sleep? How could you, go through those 3 years and not just be overwhelmed with anxiety, worrying about every different camera that's out there and worrying about who may turn you in and this and that. But I knew if we were right in what we did that day. And I wasn't ashamed of it. And I knew that, I had a clear conscience of what we stood for. And it was right. And,
It was right.
we had prayed together afterwards and we're like, Lord, if it's your will for me to turn myself in, I will do it. Just put that on my heart that I'll turn myself in if I'm wrong in what I'm standing for. And I never had a guilty conscience. I had a clear conscience the entire time. I slept like a baby every single night. I slept in the woods a couple nights. I was in the swamp for a week, but I still slept good. I mean, the swamp was rough because mosquitoes, but it was good. I mean, there's people that we didn't even really know about that hear about the story and contact us in person and different things. And like, hey, you come up here and work on my ranch, or you come out here and work on my hunting cabin.
That's wonderful.
Because, growing up, we kind of learned how to do everything, woodwork and welding and concrete and everything. So I could do a lot of different jobs. And so people would open up their houses and different things and let me work there and stay for free. And it just worked out. And so I would stay in some places a couple months and then go to another place. And I was all over the country and met so many wonderful people. And, people would say the same thing. I just felt like God wanted me to open my house up to you. So I did. And their families would be like, no, this is too dangerous. There's too much risk in this. Don't do it. And they would say, no, there's something here. We have to stand for something. And this is bigger than just us. And so they would rally beside us. And I went 2 years by myself. There was almost 1 year I just stayed quiet. I mean, almost completely by myself for months and months. And being alone, you've got a lot of time with just your thoughts, with your mind. Those guys that's been in solitary confinement, they can attest to that. You have to learn to control your mind. If you're not at peace with what you're doing, it'll torment you. And it'll drive you crazy. But it was such a wonderful time just studying and getting along and realizing what I truly stood for, and who I was as a man, I guess, and just learning just all of those different things that came out of that, and just learning so many different family members, I guess, and new family members that came beside us. We had guys we knew that were in the electric company that would tell us whenever the FBI would set up new cameras on that houses and different things. And they would set up cameras, 800 yards off. I mean, so far off you couldn't tell, but they're like, hey, we just set up another camera at your house. The FBI is watching this door, this place, and then, we never went at the house, but we knew where they were watching. And just people started coming beside us. And but it was also, you learn where people actually stood. Once there was consequences to your beliefs, you no longer believe it anymore. Once there's actually a threat to what you believe in, they no longer believe it. And it was sad because there's a lot of people out there like that. You only believe it so far until there's actually consequence. And but it was such an amazing time. Just seeing so many countrymen come together and stand beside you, and then 3 years go by, 2 years go by, and then my sister and my buddy, Joseph Hutchison, they were about to go to trial because my sister got caught and he got caught at the same time. They were about to go to trial. And they're like, well, we're going to fight them too, fight them all the way. And so they cut their legal monitors off, and we had this plan. It was an elaborate plan. We had our code written out that we could talk, and it was something else. And it all went the whole plan went through. But anyways, by God's grace, it worked out. We were able to escape again, and so Olivia, my buddy Hutchison, and me were on the run together, and it was kind of the same thing. We did a lot of traveling, did a lot of going back and forth, and there were so many times they were so close, but yet, we'd always evade them just a little bit, and it was funny. There was one time we went out to eat, and we don't ever do it. It was when I was by myself. I'm like, man, it's been so long. I just like to go out and eat. You don't go into towns because there's so many cameras, and there's just so many things that can go wrong. You don't go out to eat. And so anyways, I decided, let's go out to eat. And I'll wear my disguise. I'll look incognito. We'll go to a mom and pop store where they don't have expensive cameras. And so I go in there. I'm sitting down, and the whole police force walks in and sits there beside us. You got it. And so I'm just acting like, hey, I'm just a normal guy. I don't know about me. But it was funny. There were so many times just like that. They had no clue how close they were. But the Lord kept us in, and I know that without a doubt. And but it was amazing. We stayed here as long as we could, and then when it was time to go to jail, they found us, and we had, some people turn us in for the bounty because I had $15,000 on my head for the first year. The first year they couldn't find me, they put $50,000 on me. And then the second year they couldn't find me, they took $30,000. And the second year goes by, they fired the entire FBI team that was on that case and rehired a whole new team and restarted the whole thing. And that was our whole purpose of the thing. We're like, if we can get enough of them fighting us, then maybe they'll leave some others alone and they can not have to go through this deal. But we had gave them a good run, and I told the FBI guy once they finally caught us, and they hit us hard. When they finally found us, we were out of this ranch, and they come in, we're sleeping, and then boom, it sounded like a hurricane all of a sudden on top of our house, and they had that Apache helicopter sitting on top of our house. I mean, big old spotlight. They surrounded that thing. I mean, it was like that. All of a sudden, I look out the window, and there's bear cats surrounding the thing. It looked like they had 50 guys out there. Just, I mean, full panos, lasers everywhere. I'm like, man, they didn't spare no expense on this one. And they came out hot and heavy on the second time. But it was just that peace came back. And the scriptures talk about that peace that passes all understanding. It doesn't make sense. And it can't make sense to someone that doesn't know that peace that God gives. And when you're standing for something righteous, and you're standing for something that's right, those are God-given rights that our Constitution is based on.
That's right. Amen.
Man can take away.
That's right.
And so when we went through all this, we knew that it was a righteous cause to stand for. And so it was, when they came and got us, it was just that peace that came back, like it did so many times throughout my whole journey. And it was just, all right, your time's up. Now it's time to go to jail and meet some more people. And it was just like, I yelled across the room because Joey and Lydia were in the same house. I'm like, all right, the Lord's got something else planned for us. We're going to jail now. And but it was just, you weren't scared ever. You never had fear of getting caught. You never had fear of the consequences. You were willing to die for the cause. And to do something like that, you have to believe it. It can't be out of fear. It can't be out of just, I have to save myself. There has to be a pure cause in it. Because that's what, so many people try to go on around in different things, and they get lonely and they turn themselves back in, or they just couldn't do it. And it was, you had to believe it. You had to believe it was a righteous cause. You had to have that peace that only God thinks. There were times it would get long. It would get so long. And you just wish to talk to somebody. I talked to my fridge. There is a cabin I stayed out for a long time. I talked to the refrigerator a lot. It's me here again. But, you got used to controlling the mind. So when they threw us in jail and in consolidated confinement, it wasn't as hard as it was for some people, because we had already, had that practice of learning how to control the mind. So it was such an experience. and meeting so many good guys that were in jail there. And then while I was on the run, I was hearing about these guys, you know, some of the first ones that went to jail and what they were suffering through. And I'm, man, that's real. And it was a fight. There were so many people going through so many separate fights in city life. And you were just waiting for the American people to rally beside each other and say, enough is enough, stop hunting us down. And it never really happened. But you slowly started seeing people wake up to what was really going on. And like my family, like they said, you know, your family went through so much. I felt like it was harder for my family than it was for me. Because my dad, they would come to my dad just taunting him, trying to make him crazy. And they would call my dad, or they called my dad one time, they're like, hey, we need you to come ID a body, I think it's your son, and he's dead here, and we need you to ID him. And so he had to go down there to the ward, and it was just some other person, but they kept doing things like that, trying to say that I was dead, and they got me, and different things, just to drive them crazy back home. And it was rough what they went through, but it was, it's amazing to be out. You know, it's amazing once we got that part, it was able to get out of there. But, you know,
It was wonderful.
like Kelly said, so many of us, you know, trying to rebuild our lives. The last 4 years, we lost just about everything. Luckily, you know, we had a good family. We didn't lose as much as some of them did. But I was in jail with some guys. They lost absolutely everything. They lost their lives. They lost their homes. Their kids didn't want nothing to do with them. And, you know, when you got the part, you were out. But there wasn't much to go back.
Nowhere to go.
I felt so bad for some of those guys. And they're still trying to rebuild. But, you know, the fight's not over. And it takes stuff like this. It takes men and women that come together with a core belief in the fight has to be local. You know, you have to get groups like this together to stand beside each other, to be vigilant, to watch over your own community, to watch over each other, help each other. So when the government comes back, because they will, they test every generation and start picking one of you off or start fighting one of you, you know, y'all can come together and say, no, enough is enough. Y'all aren't going to just pick us off like you did January 6th. And, but that's what it takes, you know, rally beside each other, stand for something, truly believe it. And that's it.
Thanks, John. I'm going to come ready to meet you together. Glenn Brooks, he's local here. He is a Vero Beachian, I guess that's what you probably just like. But he's going to talk about his experience here a little bit.
Thank you, Kelly. It's an honor and privilege to stand before you folks. We have any Bible readers here? Show of hands. I read something in the book of Nahum a while back, and it really kind of resonated with me with regards to the whole January 6th, and I'm sure everybody who's had a taste of that can relate. Nahum 3:6. I will cast abominable filth upon you, make you vile, and make you a spectacle. That's exactly what I feel like they've done to me. I can see Olivia shaking her head. July 29, 2021, I was sitting down to read my Bible, and there was a pounding at the door, and I opened the door. Emotionally or psychologically, I blocked out what I experienced when I opened the door, although I had a security camera over the front door. And 3 days after I got home, I watched the video. And there was a team of about 12 or 15 SWAT tactical FBI people with a riot shield and battering ram. And so I blocked that out somehow. And I am actually in therapy now, PTSD. A few days ago, I was attending my mom's memorial service who passed away as I was sitting in the Jessup, Georgia low security prison. And my sisters called me and said that they had been attending to my 92-year-old mom who was hanging on for life until I could get there. to say goodbye. And my sister said, you know, the prison's not going to let you out, so we need you to tell Mom it's okay to let go. And
Wow.
I was like, I can't do that. But I ended up finding somehow to do that. Anyway, a few days ago, I was at the memorial service, and there was a sheriff's car there that was lingering with the funeral procession that was going to drive through town to a graveside. And I just started coming out of the blue, sitting there, wondering if as soon as the procession started, the sheriff was going to pull me out, or, which is kind of a situation that I think a lot of us are going through. But this document here is something that I drafted in prison. And I had been sending this out to the legal counsel that I had, asking the legal counsel to refuse the part that I figured was going to happen from our great president, Donald Trump. Because the problem is, if you're innocent of the crime and you file an appeal to fight it, the pardon kills it. And so I wrote this document to ask the president to alter his pardon to a commutation, which would then preserve the appeal. You know, I expected a lot of reckless disregard by the Biden DOJ. I expected our present administration and the Department of Justice to be a lot more forthcoming in helping the J6 people, but I'm finding that's actually not the case. Of course, somebody as insignificant as me doesn't have a voice to get into, get my message, my question into the right people in the administration. And I keep trying. I've reached out to our Congressperson Herodopoulos. He's proven to be utterly worthless to me, and is actually, his staff have told me things that are just blatantly untrue about his inability, their inability to reach into the Department of Justice and try and raise my cause there. So I'm hoping that I can perhaps persuade the Congressman's office, maybe they want to reconsider that position. In any event, I lost my family. As was mentioned here earlier, John and Olivia, you know, they make a spectacle out of arresting people. You maybe have heard this thing called an elephant walk, when they get all the jets on the tarmac and they roll 8 or 10, 15 jets down the street as a show of force. Well, they dragged my wife and 2 of my daughters, 25 and 17, out of bed in their pajamas, out onto the street. They elephant walked us all to humiliate us in front of all of our neighbors. And one neighbor said it looked like a war zone. He was on CBS News. And, you know, it just was too much for my wife, so she filed for divorce. I lost my dad while I was going through the court thing. He was 96. When Mom was 92, I lost her. And I am hopeful, confident, like everybody who's been through this, that given time, we have to be patient. What's his name there in the Oval Office? It's got a lot of stuff on his plate, so I don't begrudge him. I'm expecting more in the Department of Justice, though.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, keep praying about it. I was going to tell you, as soon as I stepped out of the door with all of the SWAT tactical machine guns and all that, I don't know what I was experiencing, but I think it was about 5 seconds after I got out of the door and I was confronted with whatever that was. I was standing there being frisked for weapons, I guess. And God spoke to me in my ear. He goes, "Glenn, this is a good time to pray." And I went, "That's right. That's my identity. My identity is in Christ." And all the fear, all the panic, all the chaos, it all just completely evaporated. in that moment, I realized that I was now on mission to be the face of Christ to all of these SWAT tactical guys. And I didn't know how long that was going to last. It's been, going on 4 years now that I've been on mission. This is part of my mission testimony. I think that there were, I estimated 17 million people at the Capitol for the Stop the Steal event, January 6th, 2021. As I've thrown that number out, nobody's ever contradicted it. So I'm going with 17 million people. I went into the Capitol expecting that God hopefully would have been showing his fingerprints to do something to correct what really seemed to have been a stolen election back in 2020. And so I wasn't here to demonstrate or protest or break anything. I actually got to the Capitol about an hour after the ruckus really first started. It was so cold and we were packed together so closely that after standing there for 3 hours, my feet were just killing me. So I went and sat down in the chair I had been carrying with me. And it wasn't until I was hearing what I guess were flash grenades that maybe you experienced far more closely. I just want to say, I'm fascinated listening to these other stories. I probably came up on 4 or 5 different J6 people in the 4 months that I did spend in prison. I was one of the people that got let loose out of prison that night. But it was it's really quite an ordeal. And I was hoping to have witnessed something that day at the Capitol, that God was doing something to manifest his presence, stand up for the righteousness that we're all looking for. I don't think I can look back and see God's fingerprints the way I was hoping to have seen them that day. But it may very well be that we're going to see God's fingerprints all over that day in the years to come.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks, Glenn. Now we're going to bring up Barry Ramey. I know he's spoken to a lot of people before, but he's got some stuff he wants to talk to you about again. I was in Lewisburg with him, so we hadn't seen each other for a while. Good to see you, buddy.
It's Kenny.
He's there somewhere.
All right. Hey, last, I believe it was a couple weeks ago, I was here and I had the privilege of speaking to most of your club. Thank you again for having me. If you want to hear about my personal story and FBI lying, saying I threatened them 14 times, they moved me to 16 prisons all over the United States, 3 years in federal prison, being stabbed in the face and jailhouse brawls and all that exciting stuff. Come see me at the end and I'll give you my website and you can go look it up on yourself. Because right now I'm going to take a moment to possibly begin the beginning of our mission now that we're all out of prison. Now that January 6th has been exposed for the Fedsurrection that it was. How many of you have heard of the Patriot Act? Raise your hands. Patriot Act. Any of you guys fans of it? It is by far one of the most unconstitutional pieces of legislation ever passed in the history of this country. And it completely contradicts the founding documents that this great nation stands upon, known as our Constitution. It takes your Fourth Amendment right, your right to not live in fear of illegal searches and seizures. If there's any kids in the room, pardon my French, but it wipes its ass with it and it throws it away.
Yep.
And every single January 6th in here has been a victim of it. And you, at this moment, right now, are a victim of it. We were labeled as domestic terrorists because an administration, unelected by the American people, decided we were domestic terrorists because we supported his greatest threat, Donald J. Trump.
That's right.
Me, her, him, Joanne, all of them. All of you have been put on some kind of list.
Yeah.
Your phone, your banking information is all being watched legally because of the Patriot Act, because you support Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
While we were in prison, we were labeled as domestic terrorists. It was the first time in my entire life I've ever had or ever felt or experienced what a broken heart felt like. Growing up, and I've had girls break up with me and thought, listening to New Kids on the Block at the skating rink cleared that up on weekend with the boys. But a broken heart hurts. And when the Department of Justice and the American government at your pre-trial release or any point in your trial looks at you and points and says, that's a domestic terrorist.
That's right.
If you love this country, it will break your heart, I promise.
Yeah.
It was the first time that it really hurt inside my chest, like a bull was sitting on it. And the reason they were able to do that was because of the Patriot Act. I was in a low prison finally when I was sentenced to my destination to serve my time. I was sentenced to 5 years after refusing to sign a plea for 20 years and going to trial and winning and beating the two most serious charges against me. But I was still sentenced to 5 years in prison. And when I got to FCI Miami, I was informed that I was labeled as a terrorist in the Bureau of Prisons, which I will now refer to as the BOP.
Mm-hmm.
And the BOP, through the DOJ and Merrick Garland's office, they received a phone call that all people involved, charged, and convicted of January 6th related crimes will be labeled as greatest severity. Pretty much means you're a domestic terrorist. The DOJ never in the history of the Bureau of Prisons, the BOP, has ever interfered with their classification and labeling process. How do I know this? Because it got so bad in my prison with the taunting and harassment of not just me, but my family who weren't even involved in January 6th, that the case manager, whose husband was retired from the Bureau of Prisons of 25 years, had told her this had never happened. Never once has the DOJ called the Bureau of Prisons, not even with Islamic terrorists, and said classify them as domestic terrorists. The BOP does that all on their own through a little place called Grand Prairie in Texas. Never once again has the DOJ interfered with that process, but they did with us.
Mm-hmm.
In my federal prison where I was at, there was an individual that was ex-IDF, Israeli Defense Force. He went rogue, was selling weapons to Hamas. This is back in the early 2000s. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Those weapons were used in an elementary school shooting where children were massacred. He wasn't labeled as greatest severity domestic terrorist. There was an individual with ISIS that helped him. He was from Arkansas, he was an American citizen, flew over to Syria, joined ISIS, shot our troops, killed one. He wasn't labeled as a domestic terrorist in the Bureau of Prisons.
Imagine that.
Actual terrorists weren't labeled that, but we were.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Bureau of Prisons labels you that, they have something called the counterterrorism unit that monitors everything you do, from your mail to your phone calls, your movements from the yard. They screen video footage from the prison, all at the dime of the taxpayers. You guys paid for it. You didn't ask yet.
Nope.
They just said, we don't like these people, so they're terrorists. Now you're going to pay for the surveillance on them. They moved us in a process called diesel therapy from prison to prison to prison, all before trial, making the process the punishment. Again, I was moved 14 times to 16 different facilities, 16 times in 14 facilities, all of course before trial. I hadn't been convicted yet. They shackled, they cuffed me, they put me on buses, they put me on planes everywhere from Oklahoma to Tallahassee, back to Atlanta, to Virginia, to Pennsylvania, to Washington, D.C., back to Virginia, back to Atlanta, just to torture you. And you're paying for that.
Yep.
When the Bureau of Prisons or the marshals from the federal government, the DOJ, remove an inmate or somebody pending trial, it costs $2,000 to $10,000 US tax dollars to do so. $2,000 to $10,000, depending on how long the trip, how many people are involved, how many guards are putting on that. You're paying for that. Also, the DOJ can break somebody down and get them to take a plea, keeping their 98.7% conviction rating all at the dime of the US tax dollar. The good and the God fingerprint that we're going to find all over January 6th is actually going to be the punishment. What we went and we experienced, there are communities all across America, urban communities, poor communities, other communities, American communities have been saying for years that the Department of Justice and the prison system is corrupt. And I know I can speak for myself. I wasn't listening. Well, I am now. We know our our prison system is set up to create reoffenders. And we, the American taxpayer, is funding our own demise. Recidivism levels are through the roof because these prisons are getting millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and your money, and telling you they have programs to rehabilitate these individuals, and these programs don't exist. We've been paying for them for years. They don't even offer them. So, in conclusion, what Glenn was saying about God's fingerprint, this is what we need to start looking for. And we need to take this situation and never allow it to happen again. We cannot allow the Department of Justice to be weaponized against a political ideology in this country ever again. What we watched them do to Donald J. Trump with the lawfare and the witch hunt and all this stuff that they're still going to try to do is just one midterm election away from happening again.
That's right.
I know that I am preaching to the choir. I'm not talking to the individuals in here because if you took time out of your week on a Wednesday to come to an event like this, you obviously care about the politics in your country.
That's right.
But your neighbors, your friends, your family. Conservatives, we have a history of not showing up to the primary. While these liberals, these communists will walk on broken shards of glass and lakes on fire to vote for whatever rainbow hair-colored school board member with 22 lip rings, 14 cats, and 1 litter box in the kitchen that wants to call your son Daniel. They will go vote for them in the middle of the night in a hurricane. But conservatives, too busy. Sports game. Something else is going on. And look where we're at today. And we have nobody but we the people to blame. So I'm going to encourage everybody to start to pay attention to the Patriot Act. This is a piece of legislation that has got to go.
Yeah.
For the sanctity of the American people and what our country represents. So pay attention where it shows up. AT&T turning all of our information over to the FBI without even a warrant or even being asked. It's against the Constitution. And we're allowed to do that because of the Patriot Act. Yeah, our banking institutions turning our information over to the FBI without even being asked. It's against the Constitution, but okay because of the Patriot Act. So in conclusion, again, I want to thank you guys for giving us an opportunity. There is so much stuff that needs to be told to you guys about what actually happened to us behind jail that you can give us 3 or 4 hours each and it still wouldn't be able to get to paint a picture for you to understand.
Right.
Although I think being in a prison cell may be a little better than this one. I don't know. But ladies and gentlemen, we've been through hell and back. Stories are still being told. If you want to hear anything about my personal plight, I got some literature on me. I can give you my website. Thanks for having me. Kelly, thanks for putting this together, brother.
Thanks, Barry. You know, Barry told me he was going to talk about the weaponization, and I'm like, man, that's what I was going to talk about. But I've always had a belief that no matter how hard the government came at me, it's okay because eventually I'm going to get to see the judge and I'm going to be able to present evidence and I'm going to actually be able to show them that I'm innocent. Now, as a member of the Oath Keepers, we went to January 6th for one reason and one reason only. Yes, your election was stolen. I hate that conversation because everybody has that conversation the wrong way. I can prove the election was stolen with 3 things and it has nothing to do with ballots or software or anything else. Russian collusion hoax went on for 2.5 years. They said that the president was involved with Russia. That's lies. We know it's lies, the reports are out, everybody's read them, and that's the truth. The second thing was the 51 intelligence officers that signed on that Hunter Biden's laptop was a lie. That is election fraud.
Yes.
Okay?
That's right.
That's nothing to do with ballots. It has nothing to do with the computer software. It's just the fake news spreading a narrative that everybody seems to want to listen to. And then the third thing that they did was the $400 million that Facebook gave them in free advertising, which is illegal. And nothing's being done about any of those things. That is where we are at, folks. Let me tell you something. Everything that Barry said is 100% true. Everything that everybody here has gone through is because of the Patriot Act. But here's the problem. It's not being fixed. I am not part of it. I'm commuted. I was commuted. Kenny was commuted. There's 13 of us that are not commuted. And it's all the people that had seditious conspiracy. I'm going to give you a 5-minute brief on what happened to me in the Capitol. Walked up near the door, sang the national anthem, the doors open. We got pushed in. We found a cop who was trapped in a corner, surrounded by people. We pushed the people away from the officer. The officer stood behind us. We held the crowd away from him so no one was attacking him. We calmed down the situation. Police backup arrived. The dude fist bumped me. We left. We walked to the front door trying to get out, and no one was going out because there was too many people coming in. 3 officers standing over to the side. I walked over to the side. I said, hey, we need to get people out of this building because there's people trying to get out and people trying to come in. You guys got to do something. I said, we can't do anything. I said, look, I can do something. And he goes, go right ahead. So I stood in front of the door and I yelled and I made everybody stop coming in. And I stood here for 6 minutes on camera, getting people out of the building, talking to the police the whole time. The female officer who was next to the officer I was talking to leaned in and asked me if it was okay if she went to the bathroom. I said, I don't care. She went to the bathroom, okay? Get people out of the building. As soon as we got everybody out of the building, the officer fist bumps me. He's like, thanks, man. I'm like, I'm out of here. And we walked out the door. That was my experience in the Capitol. I knew if I showed that video in court, I would go free. So I said, I'm going to fight it. Wasn't interested in a plea deal. Now, they made me an offer. They made my wife an offer. My wife's offer was to force your husband and testify against him and we'll make all of this go away. 100% truth. 100% truth. My offer was to say that a phone call occurred and that something was said on that phone call that was never said. And I said, listen, I'm not hiding anything. I will tell you everything that actually happened. But that never happened. And they said, apparently you don't want to see your family. And I said, but I can't look at myself in the mirror if I do that. I can't. So for 4 years, I didn't see my family. I had a granddaughter that was born while I was in prison. I finally got to see her in January, so that was kind of cool. Thank you, President Trump. But I will add a note to that. I only got to see her for 1 day because they're in custody of the state of Florida until 2 weeks ago. They took my grandchildren while I was away. My daughter has a medical condition. She had an episode. My wife was not there to do backup because my wife was in prison. We were both in prison. I didn't talk to my wife for over a year. And the people who had our children, our grandchildren, would not give them back to my daughter because she didn't have a support network. So they put her into foster homes. They put 3 of my grandkids in the foster homes. And things started changing in January, though. My attorney was chief of staff on the transition team for President Trump. So I had a little bit of access to things that maybe most people didn't. And I texted him and told him the story, and he said, let me see what I can do. And I don't know if he had anything to do with it. I really don't. I assume maybe. But the caseworker was fired. They told my wife she had mental problems because she was a January 6th and that they didn't trust her with children. And ultimately, they forced her to present her pardon with the actual signature on it before they would bring the kids back to the house. So, but then I got out, and no one said anything, so I'm kind of confused on how that works, but long story short, the kids are back, so that's the good news. That's really, but I want to tell you something. The justice system, the weaponization of our government, the use of the Patriot Act, there is no protection. There is no protection. Because I'm telling you right now, we have video evidence. We said, we got videos. This is going to prove that we're innocent. Except for one problem. Well, that part of the Capitol doesn't have cameras. It's not possible. It's directly in front of the Speaker's lobby, where the Speaker of the House is working. It's there. It has to be there, right? We found a journalist who was walking through the building. He videoed for 2.5 hours. There was only 5 minutes missing from his video. And that's when he walked by us and stopped. And the screen went black. The screen came back on. He was in another part of the building. My attorney said, well, obviously turn his camera off. So I'm like, no, that's not how it works. The video runs constantly. It just blacks out for 5 minutes. That's when he saw us. They doctored the evidence in my trial. We had 2 officers lie on the stand in our trial. They changed their FBI 302s. An FBI 302 is if I come to you and I interview you and I ask you questions about a crime, you're doing an FBI 302, whether you know it or not, right? He said, we helped him. He goes, they helped me, they kept the crowd away from me, and everything was fine. That was his first 302. His second 302 was, well, I didn't say they could stand there, but they did. Their third one, and what he testified to in trial, was we were trying to push him out of the way so that we could get down the stairs and assault police officers, which is not true at all. So not only did he lie on the stand, they knew that the videos were out there that could prove some of the innocence for us. So they brought in a second officer, David Lazarus, who testified that he witnessed this entire event happen and that we were verbally assaulting and trying to get by Harry Dunn. Okay? David Lazarus was in a different building. And when we discovered this, we tried to call him back in to re-testify so that we had no idea who David Lazarus was. When you're in trial, you won't know until the day before that this guy's coming to testify against you. And when they told me David Lazarus, I had no idea who that was. Well, guess what? When I figured out who it was, and I actually saw him, I went back to the unit that night. We had a little tablet. If you go through the videos on, I went through the videos, I found him, and I seen him leave the building before we ever got there, and he did not come back until after. So I had evidence that he was not there. We went into court the next day, and they said, we have new evidence we want to recall David Lazarus. The United States government said that is not possible. He is not available. Probably won't be back until after the trial is over. And the judge said, if you think I'm going to let you defame and call a Capitol policeman a liar after what you guys put him through, that's not going to happen in my court. So justice isn't there. And I'm telling you right now, all the things that you've heard everybody talk about in here today, it's all still there. All of it. Everything that's been used against us, everything that's happened in our court systems, everything that's happened with the FBI, all those things are still going on right now. And I'm telling you, we have to demand change. And it happens not only when we vote, but we have to put pressure on the people that are in office now. We have an America First agenda. We voted for that. That's what we want. It's common sense, right? I mean, that's what it is, really. But honestly, the people running this country do not care. They do not care. I'm not necessarily talking about Donald Trump, but I'm talking about a lot of people that are around him. So we have to be very careful about who we talk about.
Yeah.
But I want to explain something to you. How much money has Doge uncovered so far?
Billions, trillions.
Trillions of dollars, right? How many arrests? 0. You know why? Because they're politicians.
That's right, knock 'em up.
Right? They're stealing. They're stealing. And nobody's doing anything about it. We have to hold Cash Patel, Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, we have to hold them accountable. We cannot allow this to continue under our watch. This is our administration, and we have to get these things fixed now.
Yes.
And the best way you can do that is just like Barry said, everybody in this room has some level of activism in you because you're here, right? You can be home watching TV like, 99% of the world, right?
Yeah.
But you chose to come out. You chose out to support us, which we greatly appreciate. But at the same time, you have a circle of influence. You have the ability to tell people these stories. And you can talk about election fraud. Guess what? Those three things I mentioned about election fraud are proven fact. There's plenty of articles online you can show your friends and neighbors and whoever wants to listen to you. You don't have to get into some crazy software and the formula and all these different things. You don't have to get into that. It happened too, I mean, let's be honest, right? But you can stick to those three basic facts and prove your election fraud right there. And let me tell you something. If that 2020 election was stolen, like everybody in this room believes, I'm not a seditious conspiracy, right? I was stopping a seditious conspiracy. And that's the truth. Everybody there went January 6th because there was a stolen election in our country.
Yeah, that's right.
And all the time, there people would tell me, if I didn't have to work that day, man, I would have been there. Guess what? I had to work that day. Okay? I had a pretty good job. I ran car dealerships. I was general manager of the dealerships. Okay? But I had an understanding boss, and I told him, look, some things have to be done. I didn't realize it was going to be 4 years later when I talked to him again, but that's what I didn't know today. But long story short, guys, you have to become more active. You have to do things. You have to help your community understand what's happening to you,
Yeah.
what's happening to us, and what's happening to our country. Because guess what? I'm telling you right now, Donald Trump was in office when people started getting arrested for January 6th.
Mhm.
You have to remember that. All it takes is one election that turns, and this is all over. So we need to get the things done now. We need to get them done fast, like he's trying to do. We need to let him know we support him. We need to let him know that we expect more out of the FBI, the DOJ, and all of them. We have to demand that because we're in charge. We're the
Amen.
people.
That's right. Amen.
I want to give George back up. Make sure you support Binford by buying stuff. I've got a books over here. We will take credit cards, whatever you got to do. We'll sign your books. We'll do anything we can, okay? I'll turn it back over to George.
Thank you. Appreciate it. There's a lot of word about intervention about God. I want everybody to take out their phones and go to Google and go to Ephesians 6:11. That's the exact time that President Trump was shot at. On 6/11, 33 seconds. And it says on Ephesians 6:11, put the armor of God upon you to protect yourself from evil. Did everybody know that one?
Yes.
You know, as we talk about things that are going on here about intervention and stuff. Actually, back when we denied the military burial.
That's
Yes. There's a lot of stuff. And you know what? You could trust the government like the American Indians did, because they trusted the United States government. And about what Kelly said, and also other than, it means a lot about our opinion. So we have to call our politicians up and tell them they're all slowing down, they have a responsibility. And the intervention was that day when President Trump, the assassination attempt, was on 6, the time was exactly 6/11. Okay? And that means God chose this man to savings account. But very important that the J6's need of financial support, jobs, vehicles, affordable housing, mental health support. Give them a call. Don't expect them to call you. Call them up, get their names and numbers, and give them the support that they need. Medical insurance, you've been denied, and help them with their property. For a lot left. It's very important that we support them. Okay, and we've been going around, not to brag about me, but it took me 5 hours to get here. Yeah. You know, so these things are important to me. It should be important to everybody else. Just because President Trump won doesn't mean this shit is over.
Nope, it's not over.
Okay, and everybody's got to go to these rallies. You know, we go to these Tesla rallies and all this other stuff. We get 12, 15 people outside. They bust them in 150. People say, oh, we shouldn't go there. There's no reason to go there. Yes, there is a reason to go. We have to show how powerful we are with numbers. It doesn't matter. But everybody likes to sit home. Keyboard warriors, some of them are good, but mostly you can't hit anybody with a keyboard. It ain't gonna happen. And we gotta stop being defense and being on the offense. All right?
right.
We have a constitution to defend. We are a constitutional republic, not
right.
a democracy.
That's right. Republic.
That's what we have to remember. We have to protect the Constitution. A lot of people took an oath on the Constitution, all the veterans did, to fight for that Constitution.
That's right.
And we get defeated to those assholes that are out there protesting Tesla, blowing up their cars that they really made upon. And they're talking about Social Security. And the 300-year-old person that got Social Security, it's a great health plan. Now, one more thing I want to say very important. Do you know why the reason President Trump used the number 115-year-old and above? Because we still had a woman here in America still alive at 114 years old. So he checks everything.
It's amazing.
Knees, stuff like that. Okay, and also, he loved the number 45, that's why we're going to change it. And I'll tell you why. When he spoke in front of Congress, how many days was it? 45 days. So, and pay attention when he speaks. Don't go on your phone and tell everybody what he said. Everybody's on the phone. Oh, you hear what Trump said? No, pay attention to what he said. When he finishes the conversation, then you take notes. God bless everybody. Thank you. And God bless our J6'rs. There were a total of 5 people that died at the Capitol. Okay, also, 2 committed suicide because they didn't want to go to trial.
Yeah,
So people like to go on those.
2 young men.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. So I'm talking about mental health. I am going to introduce someone for a few minutes and then we're going to close out. Hey, Eddie, how are you? That was my husband back there. Dr. Phil DeFina, International Brain Health Foundation, Sailor Soldier, and he does things with PTSD. So he's going to just introduce himself for a few minutes and talk to everyone in the audience. Thank you. Dr. Phil.
Thank you, Senator, for inviting me this evening. It was worth a several-hour trip here. I want to thank and God bless all the good Americans here who spoke. It was just an incredible experience that you guys have had. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I'm going to try to be brief here. I've been here for a long time, but I'm a neuropsychologist, clinical psychologist by training. You can tell by my funny accent, I'm from New York. I did my internship in psychology at NYU Bellevue Hospital, which many of you may have heard of, so I dealt with a lot of serious psychiatric problems. We had the men's psychiatric prison unit at Bellevue. We had the female psychiatric prison unit at Elmhurst Hospital. I was the psychologist at both units over 8 years. Before I went into the regular army, I was in the reserves and worked in military intelligence for the army. Our mission was to work against terrorists against the United States of America. And we went overseas and did that job. our mission was never to work against American citizens. And especially with the United States Army, Abraham Lincoln set the Posse Comitatus Act, which basically says that the U.S. military can never work against citizens for fear that the military would take over the nation. So our mission was to really work against bad guys. And it was, very disconcerting with that background to see the things that have evolved and happened here. I'm going to tell you a very brief story, which I think is relevant. There's so many thoughts went through my mind listening to the brave men and women talking today. When I left the military, I was in a special operations command that was very secretive. It debriefed me for several weeks before I left. Then went back into the civilian community, and it was all over. You have to erase that part of your life. Well, something very interesting happened. I got a job back at NYU Medical Center as a neuropsych doc, and I was asked the first day on the job by the chairman of the department, can you go to Switzerland later in the week to do a lecture on a topic area that I wanted you to speak about? I said, okay, but I don't have my passport. He said, what do you mean no passport? So I was in the military, and I had a military passport that I was using. I had a brown, like official's passport. So I said, okay, let me go get my passport. Well, I went to the passport office, and the passport office used to be at one location, and it changed. That location was 26 Federal Plaza. It was where the federal government building is in New York City, that houses the FBI, the CIA, etc. So I walked to the part of the building where government people go to the building and realized that, oh, I have to go around the other end. Well, when I go inside, I had my military passport and ID that I put it through for the federal security to look through as I'm walking through the metal detector. And what was in my brown passport was my ID from Special Ops. That ID had a picture of me, no designated agency. It had some statistical information, and basically on the back it said, if anyone finds this card, this is official government ID, put it in the closest mailbox, otherwise we charge under 18 US dollars, blah, blah, blah. But there was no agency. So they said to me, is this your card? I said, yes. This is not an official government card. I said, yes, it is. So what agency? I said, we can't discuss it. Well, I was arrested by Homeland Security in that building, and the FBI detained for 18 hours. So it just brings to mind a few things I just wanted to say to you. During that 18-hour period, it was very interesting, because I went through J6’rs school, survival, evasion, resistance, escape, special ops, and I was keeping my mouth shut, and I wasn't cooperating. I had a little daughter at home. I was a single parent in New Jersey during this whole episode that I wasn't in contact with. And essentially, they tried to fingerprint me twice, Homeland Security and the FBI, and it came back no hit, because my fingerprints were removed because of my job previously. So it got very interesting. But during that time period, I refused to speak. Eventually, they said, we're taking you over to the federal courthouse, which was 3 blocks away, during rush hour. And it took them too long to get there because the federal judge left. So they handcuffed me, they put leg irons on me, had all these people taking me with several cars because I was called a terrorist. When I was sitting in this glass jail cell, because they had these glass cells in this building, there were a lot of other people that were in other cells that were dressed a lot differently from me, Middle Easterners and me. So basically they were talking about this terrorist they had, and eventually it was me that they were discussing, that I was a high priority person and blah, blah, blah. I had a joint discussion with CIA, FBI, and Homeland Security. And they said, if you're not clean with us, you're going to be in Guantanamo Bay in 24 hours. I said, well, let me explain something to you. I said, let's say I work for a federal agency that you're not supposed to know anything about. If you can find out about it, then that's great. If you think I'm a terrorist, I said, well, you have to find out about that too. I said, but we're going to be sitting here for a long time. Eventually, I will leave. And they just said, all right, you want to be a wise guy? We go to the federal court. The judge left. They put me to the federal detention center in Brooklyn. By the time I got to the federal detention center, calls were made in Washington with different agencies, and eventually they tracked down someone with the Defense Intelligence Agency that eventually realized that I was in a prison situation. They wanted to understand why I was being held as a terrorist, and they said, no, he belongs to an organization, that you don't need to know about. Get him out tonight, now. And then the same people came to get me. They were very quiet, the same abusive, federal agents that I dealt with earlier. Didn't know what to say. Drove me back, got my stuff and left. That was a very interesting experience. So I was listening to all the things that you guys have gone through for such a long period of time that created so many problems for yourself emotionally, for your parents, your sons, your daughters, your wives, the difficulties you have with families. It's heartbreaking. It's terrible. And that causes post-traumatic stress. And it causes a lot of issues. You guys are brave, you went through a lot. But it creates a lot of difficulty emotionally, financially, etc. So I'm here tonight to talk to you because I have a program. It's called Save a Soldier program, where I treat over 400 veterans, POWs, other individuals, from Special Operations Command, Navy SEALs, U.S. Army Delta, Green Berets, etc. I treat them for free. I have a foundation. It runs about $25,000 a month. They're there 6.5 hours a day, 5 days a week for a month. And when they come in, they're in bad shape. When they leave, they're in excellent shape. We do videotapes, and we have good supporters. So I raise money to my foundation because I want one veteran to pay for what they've gone through, and I want to be there to help and save their lives. And I would like to do the same thing for people in this room. We have an organization with a center in Virginia and one here in Florida. We have a program.
Where in Florida?
We're at the campus at Delray Hospital in Florida. We're at the campus at Reston Hospital in Virginia. It's not far from the Capitol. And I have experts that work for me for traumatic brain injury, for post-traumatic stress, and for toxic exposure that affects brain functioning as well. And we have an excellent program that modifies electrical, magnetic, chemical activity in your brain. We use hyperbaric oxygen. We use different kinds of electrical magnetic stimulation. Very advanced research protocols for PTSD and PPI. And the veterans that I work with and treat, they're all in the Special Operations community, went through the DoD program, they went through the VA programs, and they weren't doing well. Because medication is not the answer.
No.
And more medication is not the answer. So we're not using medication, we're using natural nutraceuticals, IV infusions, electromagnetic stimulation, hyperbaric oxygen. We do special brain mapping pre and post, and we have great success. So if there's a way I can help you guys, I'd like to work with this wonderful woman, Sandra, and see what we can do. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Dr. Phil. So if you guys have any questions, go to Dr. Phil, you guys is in the back. Okay, and hold on, Michael Sutton, before the meeting's over, he's gonna say a few things. We have books that they're selling back here, and we have J6, she makes them, I think, homemade, so anybody want to support her back there. And we're gonna, after this, we're gonna do the 50-50, and the meeting is adjourned, and then Bonnie wants everyone to go to, what's the place, Bonnie? 21st Amendment. After
Okay,
the
yeah.
party continues.
Marty. Well, listen, I know we're getting a little restless. Please sit down. We still got a couple things to do. The first thing I want to do is to help you understand how this all came together really quickly, okay? And I want to acknowledge the groups that came together to make this happen. Because I want to tell you right now.
Hi, guys. So I'm going to close it out here. We got most of the J6'rs. I wanted
First
to
of all,
hear
there's your
Greece.
group, the Hispanic conservatives of Indian River. Without you, we couldn't be here tonight, right? So Sasha, and you guys, all of you,